Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the North Kesteven series. This is a large Lincolnshire district centred around the town of Sleaford. There's 75 parishes here, so let's take a look at one of them. Welcome back to North Kesteven again, everybody. Now today I've brought you to a place which has a few links to the healthcare system in this country. We're going to be seeing the base of the St John ambulance, the local St John ambulance, but we're also going to be seeing a building that used to be healthcare related until it was turned into flats. Welcome to Bracebridge Heath. The North Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. This video is sponsored by Bassett Law Pro Clean, specialist floor and upholstery cleaners based in Retford, Nottinghamshire. Do you have a commercial space, own a restaurant, hotel or pub, maybe an office block? Bassett Law Pro Clean cover the entire country for commercial work. And they have a special offer. Quote the Village Idiot when you inquire and get a massive 7.5% off. Need it cleaned by the experts? Contact Bassett Law Pro Clean now. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. This week in North Kesteven, we tackle Bracebridge Heath, a very urban village right on the outskirts of Lincoln, located at the top of a steep hill. It lies primarily around the junction of two major roads, the A15 between Lincoln and Sleaford and the A607 between Lincoln and Grantham. Part of it falls within the boundaries of the city, but the vast majority is North Kesteven. On that note, it's worth mentioning that the city has a separate area called Bracebridge, which should not be confused with the village, although they are linked. You see, until 1898, Bracebridge Heath was part of the parish of Bracebridge, which was split. Bracebridge was considered a separate town despite its proximity to Lincoln, but now it's a suburb. The name Bracebridge is Old English. It derives from the words braesc and brycg, and it means bridge or causeway made of branches. That bridge would have once spanned the River Witham, which runs 1 mile to the west of Bracebridge Heath and between the Bracebridge suburb and the Swallow Beck area of Lincoln. Landmarks here are plentiful. This was the location of the former St John's Hospital, a collection of menacing buildings which even today give me the chills, despite the fact some of them are now modern flats. There's also a reservoir, 3 pubs, a cricket club, and even an old airbase. Let's go for a walk and see what stories they can all tell us. We start on Main Avenue in Bracebridge Heath's central housing estate. This is located between the A607 and the old A15. Using a handy footpath at the end of it, our first landmark is a small park, directly opposite a tall tower on a hill. Dominating the A607 at this point, the tower looks like a chapel, but it's not. Instead, this is a water pumping station. Known locally as the Water Tower, it stands on top of a subterranean reservoir built as an overflow for Lincoln's Westgate Water Tower. It dates back to 1912 when it was built to replace an old one, open to the elements. We'll pass by the old one's site later. This new reservoir was expanded in the 1970s, and although dated, it still performs the same function it always has. So let's head alongside the reservoir up the A607 into the village centre. This is the Grantham Road, lined with terraced housing. This row of 9 were the first terraced houses to be built in the village. They're known locally as Stevenson's cottages. They were constructed after a stone quarry was dug here in 1842. Number 44 Grantham Road now stands on its site. There's no quarry nowadays, just a few businesses. In shot here is a pizza takeaway and the Pantry Cafe at number 30. Over the road is the modern Methodist church. There's been a chapel here since 1872, originally used by the primitive Methodists. The unique St John the Evangelist church next. Built in 1908, this is the only church on the Lincoln Cliff to be made of red brick. I don't know whether you can hear in the background, but the red arrows are out this morning. They're up above the skies above Bracebridge Heath. Of course, they're based at Waddington these days, and so now the residents of Bracebridge Heath have to, I suppose, deal with the noise. But I always think it's a nice noise to hear, because the red arrows are, of course, a big part of Lincolnshire, aren't they? I always used to love seeing them in the sky when I lived in Saxilby, when they were based in Scampton. Right, we found the parish notice board, which is outside the church here. So I'm just going to put a card on that, get this job out of the way while I can, and then we'll continue with the walk. The next thing to see is a school. That school is St John's Primary Academy. Behind it is the Bracebridge Heath Social Club, which occupies the school's old canteen. Then comes a small terrace of shops, 6 properties in all. These were added in 1887 and they were originally houses. Their ground floors once had bow windows, and the small gap between the terrace and this modern co-op store used to be a garden. A recent addition is this retail area with a Tesco Express and Heath Fish Bar. This land once belonged to one of the local pubs. And that's where we find ourselves now. Standing on opposite sides of the A607 are the Blacksmith's Arms and the Bull, seen here. This used to be known as the John Bull before it was renamed in 2007. Directly behind this is Bracebridge Heath Village Hall. Until 2011, the land Tesco now occupies was the beer garden of the Blacksmith's Arms. This pub dates back to 1852. It was opened and run by the family of William Green, a farmer from Harmston. It stands on the site of an old blacksmith shop, hence the name. Across the junction with the old A15 is the War Memorial. This has a base of Clipsham stone and a Gothic cross shaft 16 feet tall. The doctor's surgery is here too, occupying part of the Bull's former beer garden. There's also a bus stop, served by the number 1. And as if all that wasn't enough, you've also got Bracebridge Heath Library here as well, which you can see in shot. But it's the building next door to this, that way, that's much more interest to me. And I'll tell you why in a moment. The building next to the library used to be a police station. After it closed, it was refurbished, and it's now Bracebridge Heath Nursery. Next we go up Red Hall Drive. The name Red Hall is a reference to an actual hall made of red brick, which we'll see in a moment. Most people know it by a different name, Crosser Cliff Court. This footpath will link us to the area in which it stands. It's located in front of the local cricket pitch. This is used by Bracebridge Heath Cricket Club, but it's owned by the NHS. For a long time, Bracebridge Heath has had a connection with the NHS, and more specifically, the East Midlands Ambulance Service. Crosser Cliff Court itself is the HQ of the service. This is the only part of the once grand mansion which still stands today. It was designed by Arthur Newsom and was once surrounded by gardens laid out by Thomas Mawson. Today, the other parts of the hall and most of its gardens are under these two modern NHS buildings or their car parks. It's worth noting that soon Bracebridge Heath might be the new location for the local air ambulance, currently stationed at RAF Waddington. Behind the cricket pitch is Stanley Crescent. This was built in 1972 on the site of the open-air old reservoir, now infilled. And a few steps further along the road you come to this junction here. Cannock Avenue is the road you can see directly opposite, and behind those trees there's a set of buildings which used to belong to a lunatic asylum. Let's go and check them out. This is the Homestead pub, built in the early 1900s. It used to be a house lived in by the superintendent of St John's Hospital. Just beyond it are a pair of gate lodges which sit either side of Caister Drive. This once led to the main hospital buildings. This is the former hospital chapel. Grade 2 listed it dates from at least 1887, the first time it was shown on an OS map. Although consecrated within the Church of England, this chapel was often used by other denominations over the years it was active. It became surplus to requirements in 1989 when St John's Hospital closed. This was its main building on what is now Goddard Way. The main building is known as Barnard House. It's named after the first heart transplant surgeon, Dr. Christiaan Barnard. It's been turned now into flats, but lots of the former hospital blocks still lay empty, and they look absolutely bone-chilling. St John's opened in 1852 as the Lincolnshire County Lunatic Asylum. It became Bracebridge Mental Hospital in 1919. It served as an emergency hospital during World War II and then joined the NHS in 1948. It became St John's in 1961. Some of its former buildings have become craft workshops. These are they, occupying a small row behind the old chapel. Property developers have now built almost 200 luxury homes and apartments here, but you couldn't pay me to live in one. I don't care what anyone says, I still think these are menacing buildings, and even the ones that have been now turned into residences, like this block here, they still look ominous, don't they? In some small way. I think it's the windows that do it more than anything else. After passing the hospital, you then come to Cathedral Heights. Built in the 1930s, this used to be the hospital's old nurses' home. As well as flats in the old hospital buildings, property developers have also built a brand new housing estate around its grounds. This is known as the St John's Hospital Estate. All the roads around here are named after cathedral cities, like Canterbury. The development began in 1995. Lichfield Road and Bath Road, where we are here, are its two main streets. To the south of the estate are the recreation ground and its pavilion, the latter with changing rooms for the football pitch. Several other sports facilities have been added to this over the years. These include a bowling green, tennis courts, and a multiplay area. The hump to the west of the ground used to be another quarry, but it's since been filled in with waste from St John's Hospital. Beyond it is the St John's Hospital Cemetery. Despite having grounds, the hospital chapel was never used for burials. Instead, those that died at St John's were all buried here, in a long strip of land which faces the old A15 at its western end. So this of course just looks like a normal open green space, but it's anything but. It is a cemetery, and there are no headstones. There are no headstones, so you can't tell who's buried in here. You can look around all you want, but you won't find any grave markers at all. Who knows how many people are buried in this cemetery? There could be plenty. Right, let's continue. You can see the end of the path up there takes us back on to the main road, and next we're going to talk about a former airfield. This might look like a normal run-of-the-mill industrial estate off Sleaford Road, and for the most part these days, it is. Its two main businesses are the local truck merchant Ford and Slater and British car company Rimmer Brothers, founded in 1982. However, the land this all occupies was a former RAF base, the little-known RAF Bracebridge Heath, just 125 acres big. In 1916, aircraft manufacturer Roby and Company Limited opened up this site for the manufacture and testing of their Sopwith camels. Within 2 years, the site was taken over by the Royal Flying Corps and eventually became RAF Bracebridge Heath. It closed shortly after World War II and became an industrial estate. Until 1981, Lincolnshire roadcar bus repair works were based here. Many of the original RAF buildings still stand, but the last of its Grade 2 listed Belfast hangars was demolished in 2001. Okay, and from this point it's pretty much all residential between here and the car. Most of it is new housing, as you can see behind me. There's plenty of houses which look like they've been built in the sort of 21st century or maybe at the end of the 20th. I can certainly remember some of these being built when I lived around here. So we'll walk through this housing estate. It does merge into the older section again, and then we'll head back to the car. What a lovely place Bracebridge Heath is. Lots of history here too. The central housing estate between the two main roads is actually a combination of several which all intermingle. There are lots of routes I could have taken through these, but I opted for Meadow Way, thanks to where it leads to. When it was developed in the 1970s, this area was supposed to be a playing field, but it's become very much residential. Right in the middle of the estate you'll find these terraced bungalows. There are 26 of them, laid out in 7 separate blocks. It's known as the Meadow Way complex, originally built with a warden's house. Today though, there is no resident warden here. Beach Close behind the complex is lined with semi-detached retirement bungalows, and it leads to a turning circle. Via a path, we're at St John's Square, an area of typical 1960s council flats set out in a horseshoe shape around a garden. If you then go slightly northeast, you're entering the Crescent estate, which can be quite busy because it's on a bus route. This is mainly detached bungalows, also erected in the 1960s. Using one of the many snickets around here, I found my way back to the start. And after walking through all of those residential areas, we are now back to Main Avenue, where I began this walk about an hour and a quarter, maybe an hour and 20 minutes ago. I don't know, because I've not looked at my Strava yet. So after all this, do we really need a special section? Well, you're going to get one anyway. There are 2 areas of land around the edge of the village that I think are worth a mention. To the north is a field known to the locals as the Hillies. Although privately owned by the church, it served for many years as unofficial common land, used for sheep grazing, dog walking, and for a rough and ready village football pitch. For several years, it's been given over to crop growing. The other area is known as Low Fields, which sits between the cliff upon which the village stands and the former Lincoln to Grantham railway line, the western parish boundary. It's another rough area of scrubland, but it's the heavy clay soil underneath that was of great importance. It was this which would lead to the development of a brickworks, and for many years that was the main village employment, along with professions such as iron moulding, machine fitting or gas stoking. Although there were people employed by the Asylum, many of those lived in the hospital itself and not in the village. Those that did live in the village worked in its grounds. I have to say that even though I know Bracebridge Heath pretty well being a local, there were loads of things I found out about it that I never knew, and there's way more too. Linked below is a 168-page document where most of this video's info came from. If only every village had one of those. See you next time. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.